Hey there, Bob Conley here. Come on in, have a seat. We'll spend a few minutes talking about you and about how you perceive the world. Are you a dot connector or a dot observer? We all have the capacity for both, and I'll explain what it means in a minute. We all have the capacity for both, but we have a preference for one. And this matters because these differences impact the way you speak and your power to be effective in your work and in your personal life. Hey, first, just a couple of quick housekeeping things. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe so you know about future episodes. If you benefit from this video, please hit like. And by all means, if you have any questions or comments watching live, please feel free to live chat. And if you're watching this later, please feel free to comment. All right. So let me preface this by saying this isn't about one preference being better than the other. It's like a lot of things. It's about aligning it to what it is that you're trying to do or what's going on with your life. So this is about the potential friction in the way these two ways of perceiving the world, the friction that arises, and raising your awareness and being able to spot them and understanding why you might feel friction in certain interactions, and then giving you strategies for effective interaction. So I want to set the tone here with a quote. It might be my favorite quote. I could think of others, but anyway, one of my favorite quotes from Nobel laureate Richard Feynman. And he said, "You can know the name of a bird in all the languages of the world, but when you're finished, you'll know absolutely nothing whatever about the bird. So let's look at the bird and see what it's doing. That's what counts." I learned this very early, the difference between knowing the name of something and knowing something. And so we're going to examine these two birds. They're Jung's sensors and intuitives. And I don't want you to get hung up on terminology. Just try to get this concept of the difference between sensors and intuitives. And then moving forward, if you feel as though you've got an ongoing interaction, or in communications you feel chafing, or just like, boy, this just feels like we're having two different conversations, this could be one reason. And so I'll give you some tools that will help you moving forward. So what is a sensor? Well, a sensor is someone who's typically more focused on observing reality, the facts of any given situation. So in my terminology, they observe the dots, the details. It's that which the five senses can detect. And if you find yourself frustrated with people who don't get their facts straight, or whose heads just seem to be in the clouds, there's a good chance that you're a sensor. That's not definitive, but it would point to you having a preference for using your senses, being sensing. So intuitives have this inner voice that can't help but try to connect dots. And some would even say that intuitives can barely even see the dots because they're so busy trying to connect them. So if you find that you get frustrated with people that aren't seeing the big picture, the connections, people who don't really want to, banty about ideas and, spitball, you're probably an intuitive, and you would prefer intuition over sensing. So I'm going to go a little more granular. The characteristics of sensors. So typically, like I said, value realism, common sense, typically seeking what is certain and observable, like to use established methods. Sensors can resist change. They prefer what they know works. Sensors will typically be more detail-oriented, literal in the actual meaning of the word, not the way it's been butchered in our modern society. But sensors geared towards the here and now, concrete observable facts. One's, I think I said this a second ago too, but just that sensors can perceive intuitives as just being unrealistic. So what are sensor jobs? Well, couple things, accountant, banker, insurance, airline pilot, athlete, surgeon, machinery operator. I know I'm all over the board, but what I really just want to illustrate is that jobs that require people to be in the here and now and performing are tend to be more sensor types of jobs. Um, if sensors had a mantra, it would be that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not to his own facts. And that was actually, I believe it was Senator Moynihan, like 50 years ago, and we hear that mantra to this day, especially in politics. So, what are the characteristics of intuitives? Well, they have a preference for a theoretical and abstract. They embrace vision and, you know, projecting past the moment, future oriented. They like the intuitive leap, that thing of going from A to L, and skipping all the letters in between. Intuitives are typically fascinated by new ideas and imagination. They get bored easily with repetition. If they've considered to have mastered a new skill, there's a decent chance that an intuitive's going to lose interest and potentially move on. I think I mentioned big picture oriented, and in their grumpy periods, intuitives will accuse sensors of just being unimaginative, and not creative in problem solving. So, what kind of jobs are intuitive jobs? Well, creative jobs, marketing, writing. Basically every stand-up comedian you've ever seen is an intuitive. Um, I won't say most, but well, a preponderance of therapists are intuitive. Um, Pretty much every founder is, every high tech founder today, from Bezos to Jobs to Gates to I'm drawing a blank, Zuckerberg, um, all intuitives. So, in a nutshell, jobs that necessitate creativity and vision. And what would an intuitive mantra be? Let's reimagine the world. Let's recreate everything. Okay, so much conflict comes from the two sides. I don't even like saying sides, but I guess I don't have a better way of saying it. The two ways of perceiving, and absent that understanding, there is oftentimes tremendous frustration. And it's like one party is looking down at the facts through a microscope, and the other is looking over the horizon through a telescope. And try to imagine, I mean, there's no way that they're seeing the same thing. And that's the way a lot of conversations can go between intuitives and sensors. So, the a couple really simplistic, I guess. I'm trying to keep this simple. But like there's conversations between, like, about tasks. So like the sensor, um, says, I'd like the checkbook. I like the checkbook being balanced. And the sensor will think they hear the intuitive saying they like the checkbook being balanced too, but what they like is the idea of the checkbook being balanced. And so the sensor might request to the intuitive, or think that they've made a request to balance the checkbook, and the intuitive doesn't hear it. It's just like, yeah, I like the idea of it being balanced too, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. So, one's talking about the idea and the other's actually talking about the task. One of my favorite examples of this, and I'm not sure how many people have actually seen this show. If you ever get a chance to watch it, the show Mad Men, the character development and the depiction of different personality types in that show is just tremendous. And there's a decent chance I will do a couple of episodes talking about those characters and what they're displaying. But what the purpose for bringing them up today is the tension between the intuitives and the sensors. So for the most part, Don Draper and his team of creatives, they depict intuitives. And for the most part, the account men, like Roger Sterling, Pete Campbell, depict sensors. And so watch how the when you watch how the creatives love their ideas. In fact, they love their ideas a little bit more than they actually love the clients. And then you'll see the annoyance on the part of the account men in they can pick that up, and they feel like there's almost an I don't wanna say indifference, but the love of the idea doesn't feel like as much focus on the customer and the utility of the services to the customer, and that's what the account man is about, is the here and now. Is the customer satisfied? Are we getting the job done? So that's one way to see it. Another simple examples, Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, was famous for saying, "I want a V8 engine," and he had no shortage of people that said, "Well, that's never been done before." And so they were that coming from that sensor place of, "We haven't seen it, it must not exist," as opposed to the intuition of, "Oh, okay, we get it. We don't know how we're gonna do it, but okay, we're gonna do it." Um, the I was going to give another example. I will. Steve Jobs is because this is a little bit of a tweak. So it's not always about intuition on a brand new thing. So Steve Jobs said, I want all my music on a device, and he basically was told, yeah, those already exist. They're called MP3 players. So yeah, I've tried those. They're not very user friendly. I want a device that is user friendly. And so his intuition told him that a device that could be of higher utility to consumers was something that he pushed to get made. So inventors in general, and it's kind of a cliche there, but inventors a lot of times work on intuition, and the stereotypical scenario is that there's the inventor working on his invention. It takes longer than he thinks it will. He's battling the bankers or the investors over finances, and so that's kind of that's an intuitive sensor battle. And part of that also comes from the fact that intuitives don't necessarily have a real strong grasp on terrestrial time. They're oftentimes just kind of have their own internal clock, especially inventors. Inventors almost live on a clock that's set to the invention itself or to the process. And and so for those sensors around them that are in supporting roles, there is this inherent conflict between, you're not being timely, or you're not delivering on what you thought it would take. And so a lot of conflict goes from there. So here are some strategies that sensors can use. Then I'll talk about strategies that intuitives can use in dealing with this. So sensors, if you're a sensor and you tend to focus on the facts of the situation. And what I would urge you to do is resist that temptation. Resist the temptation to like jump in and tell an intuitive where they have the facts wrong, and to rush in to correct those kinds of flaws. Let the intuitive like share his vision and make more progress down the road, as opposed to acting in a way that just feels like it's a crushing of this intuitive idea. In general, resist the temptation to dismiss new ideas out of hand. Give them time to germinate. Be open to possibilities. Um, the what you Sensors play an invaluable role in fact checking, in reality checks, but take a supportive mindset as opposed to a shoot them down mindset in the work environment, and look at it as like, hey, I'm on board. I don't see it yet, but I'm on board, and I am going to be questioning in a what I hope is a productive way. So another thing that can drive sensors nuts, and you might even, if you're a sensor and you're watching this video, you might even get it when you're watching this, is that intuitive stray into tangents. And so sensors have a valuable role in keeping the intuitives on track, and keeping it real. But you don't want to necessarily always be shoving the intuitive back on track. Let them stray a little. Let those other ideas. That's where great stuff comes from. So you don't want to squash it, but when all of a sudden you're on your seventh tangent, well, then go ahead and shove that intuitive back into the main point. And feel free to inquire on details, because the intuitive has probably not gone into detail, and it's was it the devil's in the detail. So that's kind of, that would be another sensor mantra, and one that intuitives get themselves into trouble for, because they've glossed over them. And so again, in a productive inquiry way, to guide dialogue that finds out, that helps an intuitive download more detail. And so just look at these kinds of situations as an opportunity for mutual understanding and not criticism. And just framing things from that perspective can be exponentially more productive in making progress in an organization and in your personal relationships. So what should intuitives been doing? Excuse me, what should intuitives be doing? Well, intuitives need to pay attention to the details, and if it's a given that intuitives aren't strong in that innately, intuitives need to be willing to submit, or to listen to the details that the sensor presents, and appreciate that he is bringing things to the forefront that the intuitive probably missed. Intuitives need to delegate, and proactively delegate, observable concrete tasks that they know they're not going to get done. Intuitives are prone to make more promises that they think they're making in good faith at the time, but that in reality are not going to get fulfilled. And if you want to maintain your integrity and your credibility with both personal relationships and in the work environment, you can build that kind of integrity by proactively delegating and finding people who can get done what you can't. If you're working, the flip side of what I talked about sensors a minute ago, and having the frame of reference of your inquiries being from a supportive place, not a shoot down place. Well, intuitives need to also train themselves to hear it as supportive and productive and helpful, and not get put off or shut down because someone is asking for a lot more detail than the intuitive is necessarily immediately prepared. The fact is, the intuitive probably doesn't know the answers, but to stay engaged and to use that process between sensor and intuitive to really refine things is incredibly powerful. Intuitives also, the flip side is that if you are just still super, or you're early in your thought processes, you want to be careful about how much you subject a sensor to, as far as imposing, I don't know why. I'm sorry, I keep using the term spitballing meetings, but just, idea meetings. You want to be careful about, because a sensor is going to be more likely interested in getting all the tasks that she has on her to-do list done than sitting in a 1 or 2 hour visioning meeting, or conceptualizing a new product. So intuitives need to be sensitive to that, and the fact that it can drain sensors to be subjected to that for long periods of time. So finally, intuitives, when you can, take the time to apply concrete examples to your abstract ideas, and that will help sensors better understand where it is that you're trying to head. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I just want to very quickly, most intuitives that I've worked with have trouble falling asleep, and they usually go to bed and lie awake pondering the universe, or and seeing the future, or wondering why what they thought would work today didn't work, whatever. And for the most part, um, sensors just go to bed and go to sleep. So I'm going to end on that. I'm hoping that I have just heightened your awareness of those differences, hopefully in a productive way. And so until next time, cheers.